can share that story separately. Let's not take the glory away from Ajay, who has prepared very hard for this presentation.
Yes.
So,
including, what are these?
Who should I make the host when I log off?
Ajay is the host.
No, right now I made him co-host. Should I make him the host and log off?
Yeah, make Dilip the host, I think.
Yeah, I think whoever's the moderator, I don't know.
Chat. Chat
so
is.
Ajay is the control of the screen, right?
I'll control. Yeah, I'm the presenter, I think, but you should be the host, Dilip.
I don't know.
Okay, so I'm making needful. Okay, all right.
Chat is the host now. It says chat is the host.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's fine. People will come and then you can allow them.
Okay, so is the recording on, Khushro?
Yes, it is on. Go ahead.
All right, so we could get started. There are 24 people. Thanks everyone for joining. I think in the way we would want to do it is that Ajay will go through the slides. Please keep typing your questions in the chat box, and then there's a separate Q&A session during which he'll answer the questions, unless there's something very urgent that you want him to stop.
should we put our voices on mute now, or
yes, please.
Okay.
Go for it, Ajay.
Thanks, Dilip. Can you guys see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks for coming. Lots of people here. Good to see everyone after a long time. Hey. First of all, thanks a lot to Dilip for organizing the whole series. I think this is something we all badly need. And also specifically on this one, for spending a lot of time helping me figure out what to present, making suggestions, additions, things like that. So this is as much his presentation as mine. Thanks, Dilip. Okay, so let's get started.
Just one minute, please. I think the recording is not on. I'll just switch it on.
Okay.
Oh, it is on. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's what we are going to talk about, and I'll try to finish in about 45 minutes. So we have a lot of time for discussion. Again, this is mostly a discussion. But the key things that I wanted to talk about is just a high-level overview. I expect everyone will already know about this. Some understanding at sort of what happens at the medical level, at the level at which we are diagnosed, at the level at which we are treated. And then one level below that, which is a biology level, which is what's actually happening inside the machine when diabetes happens. Just some standard disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert in this area. All that I know comes from understanding I've done relatively recently, as I've been forced to, given my own blood sugar levels. And so just, figuring out what's happening with me, and so understanding what's going on. So that's all I know. In that sense, this is even more of a discussion than a presentation, because I'm sure there are people here who know much more about this than I do. As Dilip said, feel free to type your questions anytime. And if there are doctors in the audience, which I'm very afraid there might be, then feel free to stop me at any time if I'm saying something wrong. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we do.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's look at the high-level overview to start with. What is diabetes? It's basically high blood, at the very simplest level, it's high blood glucose levels caused by a degraded ability of the body to regulate blood. Can you guys mute?
Okay. Dilip, you can, as a host, you can mute everybody.
The question is, how high is high? What do
Now we can't hear you, Ajay.
You muted Ajay as well, Dilip.
Ajay?
So Ajay, just unmute yourself, simple.
Ajay, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I got
Oh,
it.
he's
Sorry.
unmuted, he's okay.
Sorry. That's an auspicious start. I mean, clearly nobody wants to hear what I'm saying. Uh, but to keep going, how high is high? What does high blood, as engineers in particular, we want to know? Well, usually the measure of blood glucose is something called milligrams per deciliter. And an average of 100 milligrams a deciliter in your blood means that you're okay. That's a normal range. Whereas if you have 200 milligrams per deciliter, that's diabetes, and it could be serious diabetes. And just to give a sense of what this means in terms of numbers that we understand, 100 milligrams per deciliter, I mean, just very quickly, 100 milligram is 0.1 grams, and a deciliter is a tenth of a liter. So if I was just to make it a liter, it means 1 gram per liter of glucose in your blood. So to me, it's one of the things that sort of I thought about, and that's one of the motivations of this presentation, is it's an indication of how delicate a machine the body is. I mean, just imagine taking a liter of water and putting 1 gram of glucose in it. That's the normal level of glucose, average normal level of glucose in your blood. And if it goes to 2 grams, which is still less than half of a teaspoon, you're in trouble. I think one of the things that's becoming clear to me as I grow older, and it should have been clear earlier, and I think Dilip's been a big part of pushing this, and I think everyone should be listening to people like Dilip when they say this. Pay attention to your bodies. Your bodies are fine, delicate mechanisms that at least I, for one, completely ignored for most of my life. And I think it's important that we pay it attention, give it the respect that a fine machine requires. As engineers, we respect fine mechanisms. Well, there's no finer mechanism than our body.
Ajay, just so that people may not, have a sense of what 1 gram of sugar, our body typically has 5 to 6 liters of blood. And what the normal, when it's well regulated, is a teaspoon of sugar. It's basically a teaspoon level of sugar in 5 to 6 liters of blood, which is what the body wants to regulate your blood sugar level at.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjay.
But Ajay, this is Arul here. But it's not just the intake of the sugar, right? I mean, I guess some of the sugar is used by the body, and then the rest goes to the blood, or is it all the sugar you take stays in the blood?
So we'll come to that,
Okay.
Arul, as we go forward.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, now the basic numbers. This is a big disease. It's really important. There are about 600 to 800 million people around the world, about 10% of the world's population, who have diabetes. Not all of it diagnosed. About 40 million in the US. Numbers are estimates and vary a lot, but something like 150 to 200 million in India, the majority of whom are undiagnosed, at least in India. So this is also not just a major and big disease, it's also something which is highly underdiagnosed. It costs about 1 trillion around the world, which is about 1% of global GDP, 25% of all healthcare spending in the US, and it's rising. In the last 10 years, even after adjusting for inflation, it's risen by about 40%, the expenses on it. There are two major types, just to declare right up front. One is called type 1, which is an inability to produce insulin. Insulin is the basic hormone which regulates sugar in your blood. Type 1 diabetes often happens early in life when somebody is a child. And it's an autoimmune disease, like many autoimmune diseases where the body's immune system attacks parts of the body and causes them to be damaged. The causes are not really very well understood, like most autoimmune diseases. And then type 2, which is by far the more common. Something like 80 to 90% of the people in the world have type 2 diabetes, which is the body produces insulin, but the cells become insensitive to it, and so it doesn't regulate blood glucose very well. The onset of the disease is often later in life, And while there may be genetic causes for this, or at least partly genetic causes for this is mostly a lifestyle disease. What are the effects of diabetes on us? Well, first of all, they are serious on overall health, on the quality of life. And it's particularly severe if it's not paid attention to and it is untreated and uncontrolled. By the time significant symptoms appear, you are late. You're into diabetes pretty seriously if you just wait for symptoms to appear. And then the major reason for all of these health effects is damage to blood vessels caused by high glucose. And again, showing the delicacy of what I'm talking about. At 1 gram per liter, you're doing fine. At 2 grams per liter, your blood vessels start to get damaged. And how does this damage affect your body? Well, all sorts of parts of the body. Just to take a few major ones, there's a very highly increased risk of heart disease and stroke. You could get blurred vision and potentially damage to the retina and potentially blindness. You could get nerve damage, which causes numbness, tingling, and loss of feeling, particularly in your extremities like your feet and your toes. And then the kidney is all about small blood vessels, and if they get damaged, then you could have chronic kidney disease and even kidney failure. No question about how serious it is. And then what causes it and who is at risk? So type 2 disease in particular, we've already talked about type 1. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease, and I won't be spending too much time on type 1 because it's a much more medical disease which has to be managed professionally, and obviously lifestyle changes has an effect on type 1 as well, but it's much less affected by your lifestyle. It's more affected by the nature of the disease, which is autoimmune. Type 2, however, has major implications for our lifestyle, and that's what I'll be focusing on. So this is a lifestyle disease. It's if you're overweight or obese, these are one major causes. Physical inactivity, not moving around too much, unhealthy diet like processed food, sugary foods, and smoking are major causes, though genetics is also known to play a significant role. Genetics is hard to know, though I believe there are tests starting to be available now which tell you if you have a susceptibility to this disease genetically. Family history is an indication. And then, of course, any of the other factors above. Now, what many of these factors cause is something called visceral fat. So if you have excess fat in your body, you can have fat which is right under your skin. That's called subcutaneous fat. And that's not so risky. But visceral fat, which means fat around your organs, particularly the liver and the pancreas, that's the one which is a major causative factor in diabetes. Okay, so that's the high-level overview. Let's move on to sort of how things are diagnosed, how you figure out you have diabetes, how you test for it, things like that. Here are the symptoms. Increased thirst, feeling very thirsty, frequent urination, feeling hungry even after eating, so extreme hunger. And again, you don't need to have all of these. You can have any one of these and that might be indicative. Unexplained weight loss, a lot of fatigue, feeling tired all the time, blurred vision, slow healing wounds, tingling or numbness in hands and feet. And in advanced cases, your breath could smell sweet and fruity. The key point about these symptoms, however, I'm assuming for most of the people on this call, is that they're not feeling these symptoms. But that doesn't mean that you don't have or are close to diabetes. By the time these symptoms appear, the patient may already have severe diabetes. I know in my case, I got numbers which indicate I have diabetes and I had none of these symptoms. And then in terms of the doctor figuring out how to diagnose you, these are the standard tests for diabetes. And they're all basically measuring your blood glucose and your tolerance for ingesting glucose. The most common tests are fasting blood glucose, basically checking at the time of fasting when you haven't had anything to eat all night, checking in the morning what your blood glucose level is, And if it's below 100 milligrams per deciliter, then it's normal. 100 to 125 is what is called pre-diabetes, which is frankly maybe too mild a name. I got a diagnosis of pre-diabetes a couple of years ago, but at least it seemed to me, okay, pre-diabetes, that's not a big deal, right? It is a big deal. It should be taken as a red flag, and it's something we should be paying attention to. And then over 125 is diabetes. There's also spot blood glucose, which is just taking your blood glucose at any time without being fasting. And again, the numbers are much more wider ranging here, below 140. At any time, if your blood glucose is taken, you should be in general below 140. Pre-diabetes is 140 to 200, and then 200 plus is diabetes. Now, this is not a recommended test if you're trying to figure out if you have diabetes. This is mostly used for things like if you get admitted to emergency and they need to figure out if you have diabetes or if you have too high blood sugar levels, then they use spot glucose. But otherwise, fasting is a much better indicator of diabetes. There's another test used, which is called oral glucose tolerance test, that they give you 75 grams of glucose in a solution and then measure your blood glucose 2 hours after that. And again, the numbers are similar to the spot blood glucose. The best test in general for figuring out if you have diabetes is supposed to be something called hemoglobin A1C, HbA1c test, which measures the glycation of hemoglobin molecules in your blood. Hemoglobin molecules in the presence of sugar, in particular in the presence of high levels of sugar, get glycated. They have some kind of sugar attached to hemoglobin molecules. The higher the amount of sugar in your blood, the more the number of hemoglobin molecules which get glycated. And so the percentage of glycated molecules is an indication of whether you have diabetes and what your average blood sugar level is. So if less than 5.7% are glycated, then it's normal. 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetes, and greater than 6.5 is diabetes. Now, this averaging is done, the hemoglobin molecules, this level of averaging happens over a period of 2 to 3 months. So if this is your blood glucose level over a period of 2 to 3 months, then these numbers are indicative of what it was over that period. There's a much less common test called fructosamine test, which measures your glycation of other proteins, not hemoglobin. But that averages the glycation over 2 to 3 weeks instead of 2 to 3 months. So it's a shorter term test. And it's also used in cases where A1C is not indicative of your blood sugar for a particular person. There are cases where A1C is not a good indicator, and so doctors use fructosamine test to test your average blood sugar.
नहीं आ रहा मेरे अंदर क्या आ रहा है क्या लिखा है
Can you guys mute? Thanks. Now, just the only place I'll mention type 1 diabetes here and talk about it is here, which is what's the difference between type 1 and type 2? These glucose intolerance tests that I described apply to both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And both result in glucose intolerance. You can't handle glucose. Now, basically, the way insulin works is that body cells use insulin to absorb glucose and generate energy. Now, the liver uses insulin to store sugar as another molecule called glycogen. So we'll talk about this in more detail later, but insulin is key to regulating sugar in your body. In type 1, your body doesn't produce enough or at all insulin at all. And that usually happens because the pancreatic beta cells where insulin is produced are irreversibly destroyed by immune cell attacks. So basically, immune cells in your body think that the beta cells in the pancreas are a attacking agent. They attack the immune cell and destroy them, and so your body can't produce insulin. In type 2, you have what is called insulin resistance. That is, the body cells do not react adequately to insulin. And so you are intolerant to glucose. So body cells are supposed to absorb glucose and remove it from the bloodstream, but they don't do it adequately because they have become insensitive to insulin. Now, this can be managed or reduced or even reversed in certain cases, which is why this is much more of a lifestyle disease. Now, we talked about the tests for diabetes. They also test which separate type 1 from type 2, something called a C-peptide test. C-peptide is a protein which is emitted by the pancreas along with insulin. And so if there are high levels
Ajay, there's
of
a question.
peptide,
Ajay, there's a question.
I think Dilip wanted the questions to come along at the end, but if there's something urgent, you feel I'm saying something wrong, then go ahead.
Okay. Essentially, what happens in type 2 is insulin actually opens sort of a gate in each cell. The problem happens in the body is that insulin is not able to open that gate, which allows the sugar to go inside that cell. So there is a problem in opening and closing of the gate, which insulin doesn't get operated at the cellular level. So that's all I wanted to say. So mainly it is. It's not that the body is not producing insulin. It is producing insulin. Just that switch doesn't get open at the cell.
Yeah, makes sense. I'll actually be going into some biological details of that as I go forward. But thanks for the update. Okay, so as we said, type 1 is lack of production of insulin. Type 2 is your body does produce insulin, but it doesn't have the necessary effect. It doesn't regulate sugar because the cell mechanisms for regulating it have become insensitive. So the C-peptide test checks if the protein which is secreted by the pancreas along with insulin are getting secreted. If they are, then the chances are that you have type 2 diabetes. Similarly, autoantibody tests, which test for the antibodies which destroy your pancreatic beta cells. And then fasting insulin tests, which checks if your body is producing insulin. Now, how does type 2 diabetes progress? Basically, what happens is that since your body is insensitive to insulin, the body needs to produce more insulin to regulate sugar. And it may not be able to produce enough. So at some point, sugar becomes unregulated. But what that also means is that what we call pre-diabetes may be a stage in which you already have high levels of insulin sensitivity, but your body is being able to produce more and more insulin to mostly regulate the sugar, which is why it is important to catch this early rather than wait for symptoms to appear. And then when you can't produce enough insulin, then glucose intolerance happens. And then eventually, if this stays and the diabetes is unregulated, then sustained high glucose and insulin production damages the capacity of beta cells. So not only does it cause damage to blood vessels, but high sugar levels can also damage your pancreatic cells. They can also get damaged by the need to produce more and more insulin. And then basically the beta cells reduce or stop producing insulin even for type 2 diabetes. And eventually even type 2 diabetics might need insulin. We've already talked at a high level about this, and I'm running a little short on time, so I'll move on from this one. Basically, damage to blood vessels can cause things like retinopathy, which is damage to your nerves in your eye, neuropathy, which is damage to nerves, particularly in the feet, heart disease, kidney failure. And because blood circulation can be damaged in your feet and you can lose all feeling, potentially it could lead to amputations in the feet area as well. Controlling, this is all the bad news. I'm seeing some sad faces here. The good news is that this is manageable. People with diabetes can live long and healthy lives, provided they pay attention to it, take action to manage or reverse the disease. Let's get to the biology of diabetes. What's the basic mechanism for what we are talking about? There's 3 types of digestion and metabolism in the body. Three major types. First of all, the body is complicated. Anything I'm going to explain in the next 10 minutes is a vast oversimplification. And so I'll just give some high-level idea, which I'm sure a lot of you already have. But don't take this as being sort of the final answer on this question. The three major food types that we ingest are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And each of them has its own digestion and metabolism mechanisms. But first, just to get a high-level view, this is something you all must remember from school, but just to reiterate, these are the parts of the body which are involved in metabolism and digestion. There's the mouth and the mouth cavity where digestion begins, the esophagus, the stomach, the liver, gallbladder, along with the gallbladder, the pancreas, and the intestines. And we'll talk a little bit about what happens in these organs as we go forward. Now, what is digestion and what is metabolism? Well, digestion is breaking down food into both mechanically and chemically into smaller parts and simpler nutrients so that they can be absorbed into the blood. In the end, the way the body gets energy is through the blood. And so anything you eat needs to eventually, in some form or the other, get into your blood so that the body can use it. The mechanical operations of digestion happen starting in the mouth, obviously chewing, and then right through your alimentary canal as muscular parts of the alimentary canal sort of crush and knead the food and make it into more of a sort of a slurry or something which can easily pass through the digestive system. And then there's a enormous number of complicated chemical processes which break down the food, particularly in the small intestine, though some of it happens in the mouth and stomach as well, but particularly in the small intestine and driven by operations in the liver and pancreas. And then metabolism is all the chemistry that happens after digestion, which is to absorb the energy into the body, convert the nutrients into energy, store the nutrients as energy, and use it to build the body and maintain the body. The major products of the body which drive digestion and metabolism are two. Again, as I said, this is complicated, so this is highly oversimplified. But these are the two major agents driving digestion and metabolism. Enzymes actually directly participate in digestion in particular, though they play a role in metabolism as well. And they act as catalysts. They basically participate in the chemical reactions in your alimentary canal and break down foods into simpler nutrients. Enzymes tend to be larger, more complex molecules themselves as compared to hormones. These act as signals or messengers. They don't participate in the chemical reactions themselves, but they send messages to your organs and stimulate them to take actions. Insulin, in particular, we've talked about that, is a hormone. And it tells various organs to do things like produce enzymes and to start chemical processes. They tend to be smaller and simpler molecules, as makes sense, because they just have to do a signaling job. They don't actually participate in the process. Now, again, oversimplified examples of how digestion works. Carbohydrate digestion starts in the mouth with saliva breaking down some starches. In the acidic environment in the stomach, it stops carbohydrate digestion mostly doesn't happen in the stomach. And as it moves into the small intestine, the pancreas secrete various enzymes called amylases. And they break down starches and complex sugars to simpler sugars like glucose. And then also in the small intestine, these simple sugars like glucose get absorbed into the bloodstream. A different process happens for fats. The digestion primarily happens again in the small intestine. The pancreas excrete lipases, and the liver and gallbladder excrete bile, which together break down the major constituents of fats, which are lipids. to fatty acids and glycerol, and these reach the bloodstream after a complicated process. And then lastly, proteins. Again, digestion happens in the protein in the stomach and the small intestine. The pancreas excrete protease enzymes, which act on proteins to break them down into amino acids, which are again absorbed into the small intestine. Now, these three serve different functions in the body. Again, I'm sure you're generally familiar with it, but carbohydrates are ultimately converted to glucose, which is the main provider of energy in the body, energy to your muscles, your brain, different parts of your body. Glucose is what provides the energy. Fats can also be used for energy, but mostly they're often digested and then stored or replenish existing stores of fat that are used up. And they can be converted to energy when the body is short of glucose and short of carbohydrates, short of sugars. And then proteins are the primary agent for building up different parts of the body. Though when the body is really short of glucose or sugar, even proteins in your muscles and other areas can be broken down to create energy. This is one of the risks of losing weight, and I'll talk about it a little more as we go forward. Some diagrams of the basic mechanism of sugar regulation. If you look at the top half of this diagram, the process 1, basically when you eat something, in particular eat something which contains carbohydrates or sugars, your blood glucose level will rise based on the digestion mechanism I just described. The pancreas detect the rise in blood sugar, and then the beta cells in the pancreas release insulin into the blood as a marker saying we need to do something about this sugar. The insulin has an effect on two major sites. One is all the body cells, all of the cells in the body, where the insulin encourages them to absorb insulin and either store it in various forms of energy or directly use it. For example, if you're active at that moment, your muscles will directly absorb glucose and use it for generating energy. And then another major action of insulin is in the liver, which takes up excess glucose because the cells can't absorb all the glucose that you generate immediately after a meal. And so the liver basically takes up glucose and stores it inside the liver in a molecule called glycogen. So glycogen is something which the liver can convert back and forth from sugar. So it's a regulation mechanism. When there's excess sugar, it stores glycogen. When you aren't eating and your blood sugar starts to go down, then it converts glycogen into glucose. And then the blood glucose level declines, and the pancreas detect that decline and reduce or stop producing insulin. So this is the basic regulation mechanism when insulin increases. There's also a process 2, that is when the blood glucose falls below expected levels or homeostasis levels. There are alpha cells in the pancreas which produce a hormone called glucagon. Glucagon is sort of the opposite of insulin. It asks the liver to break down glycogen and release glucose. And so the blood glucose level rises. Like any process control mechanism, this is basically how the glucose in your blood is kept in stasis. A little more detail of the actual action of insulin. What you're seeing, the horizontal line here is the cell membrane. And this is blood glucose, which reaches the cell membrane. This could be any cell in the body. And then also insulin reaches the cell membrane. And the cell membrane of almost all the cells in the body have something called insulin receptors, to which the insulin binds. And once that binds, there are inside the body something called molecules called GLUT4s. They're called transporter molecules. You can see them just under the insulin receptor. And when there is no insulin or low insulin in the blood, then GLUT4 molecules are inside something called vesicles. These are basically little spheres inside the cell. And basically what that means is when they are inside vesicles, they are inactive. They're not doing anything. Once the insulin receptors are activated, they drive through various chemical pathways. They drive the GLUT transporters to the cell membrane. As you can see on the right, the vesicle moves to the cell membrane and the GLUT transporter basically moves over to the cell membrane. And now once it's on the cell membrane, then it acts like a conduit. It acts like a pipe. So basically glucose can move into the cell. And this is basically the major mechanism by which the cells absorb glucose. Now, if they are absorbing enough glucose, then the glucose level will fall, and accompanied by glycogen production in the liver, insulin production will stop or reduce so that there is no more need for the cells to absorb glucose. Now, this is the mechanism which gets disrupted in type 2 diabetes by insulin resistance. You can see on the left here, insulin resistance, the chemical path between the insulin receptor and the GLUT4 transporter gets disrupted. And it's no longer able to move the GLUT transporter to the cell membrane. And this is the basic mechanism of insulin resistance. Okay. Last section. What do we do about this? And again, reminder that I'm not a doctor, I'm not even an expert, but there are pretty well-known and well-studied ways of prevention, managing, and reversal of type 2 disease. And those are the ones that I'll talk about here. As I said up front, you can't wait for symptoms. It's too late. There needs to be regular testing of glucose intolerance or tolerance in your body. And the most common way of doing that is to test yourself for A1C and or fasting blood glucose. There are also continuous glucose monitors, which can be used to understand the body's glucose response. These are not expensive anymore. And for most people, if you're not a diabetic, you can try these out even without a prescription, at least here in the US. You can order them yourself. If you're just going to use them for, say, a couple of weeks or a month to understand how your body responds to exercise, to various foods, and so on, then they don't cost all that much. And you don't need a doctor's prescription to bring down the cost. To me, I found these extremely invaluable. They give a huge idea of what happens, how your blood glucose changes after you eat, after you exercise, how it changes based on what you eat. So for example, one of the things I've found for my body, and I've heard that this is generally true in studies as well, is that if something like 15 minutes to half an hour after eating, you have a walk for about 10 to 20 minutes, that has a huge impact on how much blood glucose rises. Because apparently it encourages your muscles to absorb more glucose and in general seems to reduce glucose intolerance, glucose resistance or insulin resistance at that moment. Obviously, regular exercise, including resistance training, a healthy diet, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the key thing is avoid excessive carbs and saturated fat and eating unprocessed, plant-rich, fiber-rich diet focused on veggies, fruit, nuts, healthy fats, and whole grains. And then not being overweight. A lot of these are related to each other, but a key area seems to be not being overweight. Now, in terms of treatment, there are two primarily treatment lines. And again, here I'm even less of an expert than in other areas. So take this with a pinch of salt. But the major lines are metformin. This is the primary treatment line. It acts by increasing the cell's insulin sensitivity and also by reducing glucose production from glycogen in the liver. So the primary sites of metformin activity are the cells themselves and then the liver. And then in recent times, there are also GLP-1s like Ozempic, which are primarily talked of in terms of their weight reduction abilities, but they also directly have an impact on type 2 diabetes. And so when metformin is either not enough or your body doesn't tolerate metformin, then GLP-1s are an alternative treatment mechanism. And they act by stimulating the pancreas to produce more insulin and less glucagon, so that there is basically less glucose in the blood and more insulin. They also reduce the rate of metabolism, intestine metabolism. So basically what that means is glucose is absorbed more slowly into the bloodstream, giving your body the chance to regulate it. And then they make the brain feel full, satiated, therefore reducing your food intake. And this is how they lead to weight loss. Now, that's the medical treatment. And anyone who is at diabetes should be taking it, absolutely. But there are things which everyone can do, whether or not you have diabetes. If you're overweight, then weight loss is a critical factor in reducing your incidence of diabetes or reversing it. And in particular, visceral fat reduction. Now, the good news is that the visceral fat in your body tends to go first. So while you may...
Looks like Bharat has a question.
Oh, sorry, Bharat, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to interrupt the flow. When you were talking about the medicines, one of the things which one talks about the metformin, if you go back to the previous slide, on that metformin, and if I'm pronouncing it wrong, it has a lot of side effects from a heart perspective. So it affects your some of your carbohydrate, your triglycerides and all the other things there. And hence, at least from my point of view, because most of us are in the pre-diabetics around the 6 number, A1C, and one has always been resistant to using that versus and doing a lot more on the next slide that you had on lifestyle changes. So just your thoughts on it there.
Yeah. Again, as I said, this question on sort of things like side effects of medications is probably inappropriate for me to try to really address. From what I understand, metformin is widely believed to be a generally safe drug, and people take it for decades without incurring big side effects. But again, what you're saying may well be true. There are people who might have side effects, which is why I think it's not a decision we should be taking as individuals, what our medication should be. This is definitely something we should be doing in consultation with doctors.
Absolutely.
Is there anyone else who'd like to comment on that one?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So metformin is an interesting drug. It's like you said, the first line of defense. And I think there are studies underway to because it regulates the glucose level and it, through the mechanisms that you described. People believe that it is part of the longevity equation, that if you can actually lower and better manage your sugar levels in the body, then it helps you lead a healthier life. So even people who are non-diabetic, there's a study, I think, or at least a couple of, I don't know if Raman's wife or any doctor is on the call, but to encourage continued use of metformin even after you've reversed your diabetes. So it's an interesting drug. And again, these decisions you should not take on your own, as Ajay correctly said. But I haven't heard of side effects, but people promote it even for non-diabetics to improve their longevity in their life.
Thanks, Ajay. That was my understanding as well, that the benefits of metformin outweigh any risks or side effects that it might have.
Okay, I'll just look at what I'd read and I'll share it separately. Back to you, Ajay. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Shiva. I wanted to add a few things. Yeah, I second what Sanjay said. Metformin is one of the safest. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Shiva.
Yeah, so metformin is certainly one of the safest drugs. The most common side effect is digestive. You might have upset stomachs. If it doesn't bother you there, then it's safe to take. In terms of doing things with your doctor, it's far more important that you understand yourself and listen to your body than listen to the doctor. Many of these folks with the best of intentions will give you medications that don't necessarily help you. So you have to watch the numbers, look at the data, study the facts, because many of these clinical studies are not done on people that look like you and I. So you have to understand what's happening, how you are reacting to the medication, and how best you're able to take care of your health. This is a long topic. I won't get into it anymore.
But since Shiva turned on his video, I just wanted to comment on obesity is not a necessary condition for being diabetic. There are many thin people who are diabetic and you never know. In fact, maybe they don't know, but it's always good to get tested given all the insidious effects it can have on your body if it's gone unchecked. So always test. Get yourself.
Yeah, so maybe that makes me highlight a point you did not make, which is most of the issues start at the diabetes is poor glycemic control. If you load your body with excess carbs, then the body has to find some ways to deal with the sugar levels. So for some people who are called obesogenic, what insulin does is it stores all of that excess sugar as fat, and you tend to then put on weight. And depending on your hormonal balance, the weight will either go to your gut, which is indicative of liver-like problems. But if you have other issues, it could go below your belly button, it could go on your butt. So some of this is actually protective. So there are many people who can take on and consume a lot of breads, for example, and it goes straight to the butt, but it's not unhealthy. Okay, the problems arise when you don't have enough insulin production to then take the blood out of the bloodstream and keep blood in the bloodstream at a low enough level. So that's where the balance of glucagon, insulin, whether you're active or not, all these other factors come into play. Again, I don't want to digress. You were focused on certain elements, but if somebody wants a longer discussion.
I think we should let Ajay complete because some folks might leave at the at 1 hour mark. And so let Ajay complete the presentation and we should come back and to an extended discussion right after he's done.
This is KN Singh. Can I interrupt for 1 minute? Can you hear me?
Is it something urgent or could it wait?
Yeah, this is the same thing I want
let's
to share.
wait. Let's wait then. Let's let.
Yeah. Okay. I'll wait.
Complete this
No
thing
issue.
and then you can come back to it. Because some people might start to leave before his slides are complete. Otherwise.
Thanks, Shiva. Great points. As I said, weight loss is really important, but obviously only for overweight and obese patients. And there are people who are not overweight who have diabetes, as Shiva pointed out. Now, CGMs are low cost, relatively low cost. I'm sorry, not CGMs. There are low cost devices available to measure your body fat and visceral fat levels. Their accuracy is sort of reasonably good. But more important, they can give you an indication of the direction it is moving, either increasing or reducing and so on. They basically look like weighing scales. You can stand on them and they make an estimate of the body fat and the visceral fat levels that you have. They are cheap enough that if you're worried about this or want to monitor this at all, you should be getting one. Now, I do want to reiterate that there are many lifestyle changes suggested for diabetes. What I'm focusing on here are the ones which have been shown in multiple trials, detailed large trials, to have beneficial effects. There are many others on which research is happening, so this is by no means a complete list. But these are things which are well known to either manage, mitigate, or reverse type 2 diabetes. Eating low carb foods, basically avoiding excess of sugars, processed food, excess of grains and starchy veggies and so on. These are converted quickly to glucose, leading to spikes of glucose in your blood. And then the presence of fiber, which are also part of carbohydrates, and vegetables which are high fiber vegetables will also have carbs, but they will have a much lesser effect on your blood glucose, or even an effect which actually reduces blood glucose spikes. Intermittent fasting or time restricted eating is another area which has been shown to be efficacious. There's some doubt about whether the effect happens because this causes you to lose weight or whether it has an effect by itself directly. But I think most studies show a positive effect of time restricted eating, where you can reduce your eating window to between 6 to 10 hours a day. And then they work by reducing blood sugar over an extended period and then reducing the insulin needs. And therefore, for whatever reason, it seems to improve your body's insulin sensitivity. You can do time restricted eating by starting eating earlier in the day or started eating later in the day. And studies show that early TRE is more effective than late TRE. Regular exercise, and what's recommended is a combination of aerobic and resistance training. I wanted to point this out because a lot of us do tend to get either aerobic or walking or other exercise, but tend to resist resistance training. It is important to try to do that as well. It lowers overall exercise lowers blood glucose by increased muscle activity, raising muscle insulin sensitivity. But resistance training in particular increases muscle mass, which makes you use more glucose. It also stimulates muscle protein synthesis, preventing muscle loss when you're losing weight. This could be an issue. I know people who've lost a lot of weight after a diagnosis of diabetes, but because they don't do resistance training, have lost a lot of muscle as well, which is not good. And so resistance training is important, particularly when you're trying to lose weight. But even otherwise, if you do resistance training, even if you're not losing weight, it helps improve your insulin sensitivity. And then another well-known studies have also shown, and this is something I can talk to, that a 5 to 15 or 20-minute walk after eating reduces glucose spikes and therefore your average glucose. There's some debate about whether walking immediately after versus 30 to 40 minutes after is better. But either way, walking after a meal is no question that they have a good impact. And CGMs in particular can help decode your body's response. Watch what works better for you. If you put in a continuous glucose monitor, you can actually find out. There are also some things which many of us are familiar with, which are recommended to us as ways of mitigating or reducing diabetes, and which is basically taking various kind of herbs or other things as, in some cases, people say that these are medicines or solutions for it. So I just wanted to give an idea of a few large studies which have been done of the effect of some of these herbs or spices and so on. And without getting into the detail of any of this, we are already out of time. I just wanted to say the results are mixed. There are some indications that some of them have impact, but the indications are mixed. And I did want to at least warn people against an exclusive reliance on these if you are at a diabetic level or above. Even where there has been some indication in studies that cinnamon or ginseng or betamelon or fenugreek have an effect, nobody is saying that these have a problem. So having them is good. Some studies indicate they have a positive impact, but quite often the positive impact happens when your diabetes is at a level where it is not managed well by medicines. I doubt if any of us here might be at that level. And so for people who are just trying to manage their diabetes or pre-diabetes, I wouldn't rely exclusively on these. At least that's what studies indicate. And so finally, in summary, diabetes is serious. It can have a huge impact on your life. I hope if there's nothing else I've indicated, that's one thing I've indicated in this slides. Compared to other chronic diseases, it needs much more personal focus, attention, and mitigation, direct action. In short, it's not about popping a pill. It's about taking action. Get tested early, because by the time symptoms appear, it might be too late. Prevention is better than cure. And type 2 diabetes in particular is reversible or manageable. And as engineers, I mean, the last thing I wanted to say is a lot of us love machines, have grown up working with machines and mechanisms. Well, here's a beautiful mechanism. And so know your body, just understand your body and learn to respond to it. Learn more about the mechanisms in it. Rather than rely purely on a medical industry, which often has its own motivations, processes, which are not necessarily ideal for how you work. And that was it. Thanks for your attention.
Hey, thanks, Ajay. Kane, can you continue with your question? Sorry, I stopped you.
Yeah, and my experience, I am suffering from retina pigmentation since I think childhood. I don't know it is by birth or by what. At IIT Kanpur also I had, but many people don't know about that, except I think Sanjay Agarwal. So in my case, I had an eye issue since I think, and my doctor told me that I will be blind by 35, but I am 65, still I can see something. So that is better than nothing. And I have many tools which helps me to read actually. So in 2007, I got my right eye cataract, because cataract comes very early because it saves you from the sunlight, and saves your retina. Because once the retina cells are dead, they are dead. They cannot be regenerated. So in 2007, I got a machine from US Skyfix 600. It was not approved in USA. I can explain the reasons later, because that is not a topic. And that helped me a lot actually. It is a electrical neuromodulation. And 2013, I bought a new model. And during COVID, they stopped production, and I could not get electrodes and other thing. But my brother is in Denver, so I am managing actually with a lot of wiring change and other things. I wanted to take help of many, but nobody in India wants to make it, and nobody in the US. The US, one company has took over the Skyfix, but FDA is not approving that. So they are not getting any funds. So anyway, what the Skyfix is a scientist. I talked to him. He was chairman of he designed a machine. He told me that you reduce your hemoglobin, your brightness will increase. And it happened actually. I was never diabetic. My HbA1c maximum was 5.8, but now it is 5.1. And before COVID, when I joined the little group actually, and after say 1 year, I always have to make the brightness at the highest to see. But then I could see with half of the brightness actually. TV and other things, I have to reduce the brightness of everything. So my eyes improved, and now my HbA1c is 5.1. And so it helps. That higher diabetics can affect your retina, the lower diabetics can improve your brightness. And second thing is, even though you are not diabetics now, the second is very easy actually. The intermittent fasting, exercise, what you say, strength training or resistance training, and proper diet. But I was taking 60% carbs as suggested by Lalit, and then around 15% protein and 25% healthy fat. Not eating any SOS. I followed SOS, no sugar, no oil, and no salt. There I made a mistake. During COVID time, I did a lot of exercise at home. Before that, I used to go to gym and do the 1 day cardio and 1 day resistance training or strength training. But thereafter, during COVID, I started walking in the house evening, and I started doing 20 hours fasting, and my sodium level came down. And that affected my eyes again, because sodium is the carrier of blood to the eyes and brain. So that my sodium level went down up to 118 actually, and its range is 136 to 140 something, 143 or 144. Unit I don't remember. So that created a problem. But then I recovered in 4 years again, and I regained my this thing a little bit. Whatever is gone actually. Retina, whatever cells are dead. But with the neuromodulation machine, whatever is alive, little bit alive, you can charge it actually, and that technology I will discuss later actually, but it's not topic of today. But it did have a large impact on me with lower hemoglobin glucose. So
Thanks, Ken.
whether you're yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
So
I'm just looking at the chat and I don't see unanswered questions there too many. So just
I
wanted to
have
open
some
for
questions
general-
too, if you have time.
Yeah, but for Kane, actually, thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of us think that we are managing our A1C either through medication or otherwise. But the point you're making it is that being at the top range, even if you're not diabetic, being at the top range of A1C, for example, 5.7 may not be enough, right? If you are able to reduce through lifestyle changes, there are benefits above and beyond, just being at the top range. So thanks for making that point.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Chat. And the other thing that, it also highlights is, as Ajay was saying before about the human body, it has an amazing capability of healing itself if you give it half a chance, so changing your lifestyle wherever you are, in your age or fitness, the body will try and heal itself to get it as good a shape as it can through all these internal fascinating machinery that it has at its disposal. So the
Yeah, by
fact
the
that
way,
you can,
Sanjay,
yeah.
I did want to say very quickly, I know there are people here who've used an understanding of their body and other ways to reverse diabetes, or they were on medications and have stopped. And in particular, I believe Sanjay is one of those people. So I wanted to have you maybe spend a couple of minutes talking about sort of how you did it, what happened. I think that will be very useful.
Thanks. Yeah, so I did reverse my diabetes, and the frustrating part was it took, I think, 6 months of a lifestyle change to reverse, living with that disease for 20 plus years. And so it's very doable. Uh, I got inspired, I had nothing to do on a trip to India, and I joined a WhatsApp group by LMK. Started doing some reading on my own and found a whole food, plant-based diet actually had a lot of benefits. There's a lot of noise around whether a Mediterranean diet is better, or I think basic underlying fact is less processed food, I think is a good way to approach, which is, what we're used to in a sedentary life, which is what I had before. You eat all garbage that you can get your hand on, and just moving to a healthy diet and walking is sufficient to alter your lifestyle enough to not be diabetic.
So
So I
Sanjay,
encourage
there's a question for you from Murli. Did you stop medication for diabetes altogether?
Yes, I've stopped for the last 2 years. A year and a half. I'm not on any medication.
Great.
And Sanjay, can you talk about how CGMs helped you?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm a huge fan of CGMs. I'm a little disappointed that Medicare doesn't cover my Freestyle Libre, which is what I had used, but I'm thinking of switching over, like Ajay mentioned, to the over the counter. One of the issues that, people often find CGMs, they find it useful if they use it for a month. I travel a lot, my diet changes a lot, my lifestyle changes a lot. So keeping an eye on how the glucose regulation in your body is going, depending on whatever you're doing, in your life, I found it extremely useful. So a few things that, like the walk after the postprandial walk, which, you'll see lots of studies that say, oh, 5 minutes, just 5 minutes is good, or you should try to bracket your glucose peak that naturally comes after your meal. All those are fine and subtleties, but just taking a postprandial walk, I think, has a huge effect. The second thing I found out was uh, never eat naked carbs, because that will cause a huge spike in your glucose. Doesn't matter how well your body is regulating. Always eat it with some protein, fiber, etc. Maybe even preheat that part, and you will see that the CGM will clearly show that your body, even while eating the same amount of carbs as you would eat otherwise, the blood glucose is managed a lot better, because it impacts the digestion process, etc., to raise your blood glucose level. So those are the kind of things, and I used to normally prick my finger in the morning to monitor my diabetes, but I found out this thing called the dawn effect, which is, even before you get up, the body especially starts signaling cortisol, saying, hey, this guy is about to get up. He will need energy when he gets up. Let's start pumping glucose into his blood. So when you measure, it's actually at a little higher level than what it was throughout the night. And you can clearly see that on things like the CGM, saying throughout the night you were at a much lower level, but in the morning, even before you get up, slightly before you get up, the blood glucose starts going up. So the body knows and is signaling and is monitoring, saying, I anticipate the needs of what this human being will be doing. I anticipate my own needs, and will start regulating the glucose level that way. The other thing I found out was how much glucose goes up, even if you don't eat, but you exercise. If you're doing aerobic exercise and you wear a CGM monitor, you will see that the body and the muscle is releasing glucose levels to meet your energy needs. When you're playing pickleball or you're doing something that is exertive, the body will raise its glucose, and it's not like you ingested anything, but the glucose levels will go up. So you find out a lot about how the body reacts and regulates itself through a simple, thing patch that you put on your body. Other thing I was surprised to find out was it detects stress. So I think the flight model, you'll raise your glucose level to make sure that you have sufficient energy. So you find out a lot about these things. I'm going on and on, but it's absolutely for find out whether you have diabetes, manage your lifestyle, and it's completely reversible. When I was first diagnosed with diabetes, my doctor said, Sanjay, it's a lifestyle disease. And I paid no attention to it. He said, give me the pills and I'll continue to live as I do. But it's absolutely a lifestyle disease. You can change it wherever you are and make a huge impact in your life and get away from the insidious things that this disease carries when unchecked and uncontrolled.
So question, how much did Ajay pay you for all this?
I think there's a question from BS.
Thanks.
Which I at least don't know the answer to. Are small meals better, lots of small meals, or 2 or 3 big meals? Which is better? Does anyone have an answer?
So when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, I was told, eat small meals every couple of hours. And it's a way of basically keeping your blood sugar levels in check. Avoid larger excursions from the baseline when you do it. I think the more current thinking is keeping the overall sugar level during the day at a sustainably low level. So whether it's through small meals or time restricted eating, or that it's basically, I'm not sure the current advice, and I wonder if there are any endocrinologists on the call today, but I don't think doctors basically tell me what they told me when I was first diagnosed, saying small meals. It's just saying you need to keep your blood sugar in control, whether it's through intermittent fasting or whatever the problem is. So I was asked to do intermittent fasting by my endocrinologist, because he said, "What's your biggest problem?" I said, "It's the late night snacks." So he said, "Time restrict your eating and you will cut out the late night snacks." And that really helped me. So I'm not sure there is a clear answer whether it's all about managing your glucose level. And if it returns to baseline in a reasonable amount of time, I think it's okay to have just 1 or 2 a day.
I'll add a few more. I think the notion of intermittent fasting is to teach your body to do all the things it should know how to do. Something you haven't talked about on this call is the flexibility of living off glucose or off fat. The best bodies are those that can do both. So ideally, while you're asleep, you're burning fat, and while you're active during the day, see, glucose can be burnt a lot faster. So if you're active, you're running, you're exercising, you need glucose. But when you're not, then your body can function off fat. So teaching your body to do both is incredibly important and is done best by a slight variant of what you described. There are 3 things you're doing. One is caloric control. What is the total number of calories you're consuming and relative to what you need? The second is what types of food, excuse me, because excessive protein is not good. The body doesn't process that. So you need a right balance of fat, carbs, and protein. And it's good that if the carbs you take come with a lot of fiber, because that's what allows you to digest it over a longer period of time. So it is better to not be snacking between meals and to allow your body to be more flexible. So anyway, I'll pause there if somebody wants to get into
No,
the
that's a
details.
fair.
I have a quick observation that I want to. You want to finish, Sanjay?
I said that's
since it's we are past our time, we'll continue the Q&A and the discussion, but I want to basically just make a comment by thanking, before everyone leaves, thanking Ajay for spending a lot of time preparing for us, and the reason for his presentation is to actually help us. He cares, and the best way to thank him will be for you guys to actually, whether you are diabetic, pre-diabetic, or perfectly healthy, is to make some lifestyle change and let him know the change you're making. And I believe that's the best way to thank him for his time. So, and I pledged making changes, and I'll let you know, Ajay, the changes I made as a result of your presentation. That's point one. So thanks. Second one is that the question Ajay Bharat raised, side effects of metformin, regardless of the side effects. I think the biggest reason for lifestyle changes should be that there may come a time when the medication won't work or its efficacy will go down. So it is important before that happens that you're making a lifestyle change now, so that your medication can continue to work, or hopefully you can reduce it or even reverse it. So
yeah. I think just to add on that one, Dilip, but my point was not that taking a medicine is bad, but I think just to try to avoid us getting into the easy option of going into a tablet first versus saying thoda sa lifestyle changes karo, that sort of would make a difference. Because when you go to the doctors immediately say, okay, you are at 6.1, 6.2, go and take a metformin. Versus, I tend to do, if lifestyle changes don't impact, obviously I'm not going to be silly and not take a tablet, but I'm just trying to say what is first, what is second. That's all.
I think Shailesh was trying to say
I heard Bharat say that you start taking metformin in the pre-diabetic state. So I just wanted to clarify, which you just did, saying that you shouldn't start taking metformin at the pre-diabetic stage, right? Okay.
Great.
One other thing I will say is that the what I learned from Ajay's presentation, particularly the biology section, and when he had shared some intermediate drafts, is that diabetes is not a disease. It is and therefore you pop a pill and manage it. It's actually a failure of the system, and we should treat it that this our body is failing and the feedback loops are failing, and so therefore continuing with the same lifestyle with the pill is not the solution, right? Because it's not just a disease, oh, you pop a pill and move on. So that's what I learned from the biology part of it.
Just to put into perspective, when I say I reversed the diabetes in 6 months of lifestyle change, Most people take 500 milligrams of metformin a day. I was on 2,000 of metformin a day plus an additional
Wow.
additional drug.
So
So
what was your A1C which triggered the medication? That's one question.
when it triggered the well, I don't want to go into my entire medical. I was diagnosed in a very strange way. I was ill. I came back from an international trip and I was fluish and I felt flu-like symptoms. So like an idiot, I started saying, oh, I better take some vitamin C, started drinking a lot of orange juice. After the weekend, I still felt like, very sick. So I went in and they checked my blood sugar and it was like 400. They said, oh, this is great because, orange juice has a lot of sugar in it. And it's not something so one of the things when you diagnose with diabetes, they say, no fruit juice, eat all the fruit you want, but no fruit juice. So yeah, I don't know what a 400 A1C, but they had to give me insulin shots, etc., keep me overnight in the hospital, and then we started the metformin regimen at that point.
What is the recommended percentage of protein, carbs, and whatever else you guys? I mean, is there like a guideline, like half protein, half carbs during the day, or a mix? What works for you, Sanjay?
Yeah, keep your protein to below about 1.2 grams per kilogram of your weight.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're 70 kilograms, well, what happens is beyond that, the body can't process it, and it converts the protein into sugar. So so there's no point taking more protein than that. And then the rest of it, do as works for you because it's a balance of fat and carbs. I don't fear fat, but I have high fat content in my diet. And I try to restrict carbs to below 100. I don't go the extreme of there are people who believe in keto and will try to get you to do below 30 or whatever. There's no point stressing yourself because then, to a point Sanjay made, there are other metabolic pathways that put sugar in the bloodstream, and stress is one of those. So you don't want that. So don't stress yourself to such an extent that you're actually harming yourself.
So on protein, I often say this in our health exchange chat is I find a lot of people are protein obsessed. And protein has its, but as a prior diabetic, one of the things that protein, as Shiva pointed out, there is no protein, like fat, there is no protein storage mechanism in the body. Okay. And so what the body gets rid of the excess protein is through the kidneys, which means your kidneys have to work a lot harder to get that excess protein out of your system because it has to remove that nitrogen molecule, etc., and take care of it, and then you excrete it. But kidneys are, again, as a diabetic, if you're a diabetic, is a very impacted and delicate part of your body, and overworking it because you've decided, I want to eat a lot of protein instead of carbs, I anticipate does a lot more damage than the benefit it would get you in there. So Ajay made some good points about weight loss, and you will lose muscle mass. So you want to make sure you do all that to make sure you're not losing muscle mass. But I'm not protein obsessed. I mean, I eat the protein that I get. I don't add whey but there are many people who will take protein additives in their diet.
The second question I had was, I do suffer from not intermittent fasting, but intermittent sleep, which means not a continuous good 8-10 hours of sleep. I mean, it's like 4 or 5 hours, and I wake up not to urinate or anything, just it's not that continuous sleep. Is that have an effect on glucose in your blood or diabetes?
Yes.
I believe so, yes. I believe it is one of the potential factors for affecting it.
Have
Now,
you checked for sleep apnea?
No, I mean, I went to the doctor. He did not diagnose me with sleep apnea, but I don't
Or
know.
did he run the test? Did he run the test on you or?
No, he has not run a test, but
Actually, even an Apple Watch does a good job of assessing
Yeah.
your sleep if
Yeah.
you have one.
It does, yeah.
what on the Apple Watch needs to be monitored?
Just sleep. It has a sleep.
During the sleep, it will tell you.
Yeah. But the other aspect, and you don't, at least I have a single data point on our Scotland hike when we shared the hostel room, the 5 of us in there.
Yeah.
None of us snored. So, snoring is an
So
indicator.
yeah, we were in the same room. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So
we were so tired. We all went to sleep fairly well. Those days were wonderful, but under normal circumstances, I do suffer from.
I
so
think
one of the things, sorry, Ajay, just
Pinto, did you listen to
Sundarajan
Rohit
wanted
had
to
given a whole talk on the sleep, how to improve it? Did you listen to that? Or you should listen to that part. He has a whole section on sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
I can forward you.
Sundarajan has been trying to say something for a while.
Dilip, who has given that talk? If you just share that later.
Rohit had, Rohit and
Yeah.
I talked on the hill span.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
did a whole section
Rohit
on
was
sleep.
doing.
So.
Yeah,
I'll
go ahead,
listen to that.
Sundarajan.
I'm not pro supplement.
Just a second. I think Sundarajan has been trying to say something for a
Oh,
while.
okay, sorry.
Hi, Ajay. Thanks a lot for the presentation. I thought I would share something about recent experiences about my relatives, two of my relatives, who have undergone something called diabetic foot surgery. And I have learned a lot about this in the last about 3 months. I mean, I thought I'd share something very briefly to you all. People who have high diabetes, I mean, those sugar levels which are varying between 180, 200 all the time, some of these people, not all, have this problem of having calcification of their arteries. Now, why it happens, what happens, I don't know. I know two cases now where there are 3 arteries going between the knee and the ankle. There are 3 arteries in each leg, out of which for most people, 1 artery is already blocked by the age of 35, 40. And out of the 2 arteries, if at least one of them is not clear for supplying blood to the feet, that means below the ankle going to the feet, there are very, very small arteries which goes to each of your toes. Now, if those are choked by calcification, what they call is calcium deposit in that. If it is completely choked, there's no blood going. And because of that, if you have even a very small injury, as small as suppose you walk at home on a rice grain and it cuts your feet, then it will never get healed. And if it never gets healed, it becomes gangrene after a few months. And then you have to cut that part of it. And then the toe and things will keep coming down if you don't treat it. So one of the things that you have to check is by doing a test called Doppler's test, which checks oxygen content in your feet, in your leg and your feet. It tells you, see, normally do angiography for the heart, angiography, angioplasty. That can be done for the arteries also, but it is successful only up to the level of ankle. Beyond the ankle, you cannot do any angioplasty, ballooning, stenting, all those things cannot be done. So if you have problem between the ankle up to your toes, so there is nothing else but looking at what is the oxygen content of your blood or at the feet level, at various parts of the feet, from the ankle to the toe. And you hope it will increase it to beyond 35 or 40. That is the partial pressure that is required. And if it doesn't come to that, then you have a problem. So you have to take care of your feet beyond 60, 65, especially diabetic, so that you don't get into this trouble, because my brother-in-law and my cousin brother both are having this problem as of today. And we are trying to find out where to amputate the feet, at which part, whether it is near the toe or 2 inches below, behind the toe, right up to the ankle. That's what we are looking at. So I thought I'll share this information with all of you.
Thanks. That's very informative.
So what test do we do for this? Is just the simple diabetes, or is there any test we can do for this?
If you have diabetes,
yeah, then do that.
Whether your arteries are choked or whether it is blocked, this test can be done by angiography, angioplasty, and Doppler's test.
Doppler's test. Okay, I got it. Okay.
It tells you basically blood is carrying oxygen, and that oxygen is diffused through the skin. And this sensor measures the oxygen level. If that oxygen level is below 39 or below 30, latest, I mean, the least that it can come down to is about 30. If it is below 30, that means the blood which is coming there will not heal the wound. So even if you have a small minor cut, that cut will not heal at all. And ultimately, that will change into a gangrene and you'll have to cut it out.
Yeah,
Cut
but
that.
so on this front, before you get to all these tests, you ought to be checking with your doctor at least once a year they can monitor the circulation in your feet and check if you have sensitivity. Because there are many ways to tell if there could be an issue. So you don't have to go do all this testing right away, but you do need to check every year. And the same thing with your eyes. You have to check for diabetic retinopathy, even if you're pre-diabetic, because this is all a problem of blood flow to the extremities. So that's what you have to be testing. It can happen on your feet, your hands, any extremity. Eyes are endpoints also.
Another question I have is,
narrow vessels. Narrow vessels is where, you feel the choking off, and extremities are where, the blood vessels are basically tapered off to extremely small vessels. And that's why. So one of the first things I was told when I was diagnosed with diabetes is you have to live like as if you've already had one heart attack.
That's called peripheral artery disease, PAD.
Yeah.
so what about guidelines in India? Somehow, I mean, I visit reasonably frequently, and my whole family has diabetes. Luckily, right now I don't. But I mean, my mother is delighted if her A1C is 7. My brother has it at 6.5, and I said, "Do you take any medication? Do you do it?" I see zero precautions, zero everything. He says, "My doctor tells me this is fine." So I guess the guidelines of where that A1C level needs to be, and he gives me cites examples of 5 other relatives who are at 8s and 9s are living at least for now, living a pretty normal lifestyle, whatever they eat. So I'm like, is there something like either Indian medicine is recommending something different than US recommendation, or are these worldwide consensed upon guidelines on A1C level?
So, Parvita, I have a comment on that. So, guidelines in India, I think they are, for example, blood pressure. We all know it should be 120/80. In India, they say no, 140/90 and 160/100 if you're over 70. So, I think those are, no one can achieve those. So they say, okay, let's just separate out the worst of the worst instead of saying what's what's normal and what's not. Same with A1C. In India, they're constantly saying 7 is acceptable.
Yeah.
In the US, they're saying 7 is acceptable if you're over 85. But, let's say no, 7 is not acceptable. So I would take it with a grain of salt, guidelines coming from India. I think they're trying to separate not healthy from unhealthy, but unhealthy from extremely unhealthy.
Good point, Amresh.
That's
I just wanted to add that, I mean, while treatment, medication, all of those things, there'll be different guidelines and doctors may behave differently for various motivations. The lifestyle changes we talked about have nothing much to do with this at all.
Yep.
6 is better than 7. Under 6 is better than over 8. So those are all things which we can all do and should be doing anytime we get numbers which look high.
I want to comment on this too. I have to say that you don't have to make huge lifestyle changes to see differences. Even little stuff. I mean, Sanjay achieved something most people can't dream of. But even if you do really little stuff, it makes a huge impact.
There was BS had one other good question, which I think we should talk about. What is more important, diet or exercise? I'll give my take, which is I think they work in different ways. And so I don't think you can skip one or the other, which is do lots of exercise and eat horribly, or go on a good diet, but at the same time, don't do anything on exercise. That's my take.
Ajay, this is Arul.
Well,
Malti, my wife.
Go ahead, Arul.
Yeah, she has a point about nutrition since you mentioned about nutrition. Anyway, let me give it to Malti.
Hi, everybody. There are two things people don't know about at all. One is methi. Methi is very good in controlling sugar. Either the leaf you can use in with the dal and make it nice, or with the chicken if you want. Some people like, but there's a method to do it, so you need to do it the right way, and then it's very healthy. And also the seed, fenugreek seed, methi seed powder is very good. First thing in the morning, take it's very difficult, it's not palatable, but it is but if you have it, you will see the difference. Like about 3/4 of a teaspoon, you can just mix it in water, about 1/4 of a cup of water, mix it and drink it without tasting. You have to drink it, and followed by another cup of water or so. Initially it'll be very difficult, but it is worth it. That's number one, which most people don't know about at all. I'm sure none of you here know about these. Next is the
Though
next one.
Ajay did mention fenugreek seed in his presentation, just so that
Yes.
you know.
Okay. And the next one is fermented rice. Idli is very good, especially idli we all make with the fenugreek seed, when we grind the dal. So that's very important when the dal is ground to put fenugreek little bit, 1 tablespoon for 1 cup, and then make and the third one is the karela. Karela is very good. You can eat if you don't have people to cook for you. You can, this bitter gourd, Indian bitter gourd, not the Chinese bitter gourd. All you have to do is just slice and just eat it raw. It's going to be difficult, but you can eat it raw. About 4 to 5 slices in the morning. So these two things are important. And also fast walk. Walking, if you are able to do a fast walk, about 45 minutes fast walk is really good. 1 hour is very good, but initially half an hour and push it up to 45 to 50 minutes. So that's what, only these 3 things I wanted to add.
Yeah. By the way, she's an MBBS
Seriously.
doctor. Yeah, MBBS doctor, and her daughter is a nutritionist. Anyway, somebody had a question for Malti.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to eat lot of raw vegetables and lot of raw fruits. I never used to have any fruit juice, not even vegetable juice. Sometimes green juice that was there, karela and other things, methi and other things I used to eat. And last year I had an accident in gym while doing the strength training, leg accident. And after that I was inactive.
Yes.
After that I was inactive. Yeah, you have seen me after 1.5 years, I think. So then last year my PSA was 2.5. This year on routine test it came 8.5.
Yeah, that's
And,
very high. Yeah.
Yeah, that is very high. Then they ordered a full body PET scan with focus on prostate, and they found a piece, actually separate piece, and then biopsy was done. It confirmed the cancer, and then MRI was done, and then since it was early detection, every year I used to get checked, actually. So they did 20 hormone therapy and bone strengthening injection, and then 20 radiations. And then I again went to Max Mohali. I got treated at Max Mohali because my brothers lives in Noida, Panchkula. So then after 3 months, I again had a hormone injection, and still I am on hormone pill once in a day. Now I am on 20 pills. I never used to take any pill. So, but I think one day I will be out of the pills, actually. But then there I saw many oncologist department, many people coming with kidney problems and other things. And one of my relatives is right now there in PGI Chandigarh from Jamshedpur. He is very young. He runs a gym, and he has a urination problem. So And one of my colleagues, actually ex-colleague, 40 or 50, he had a kidney cancer. So one is protein. Protein, I don't recommend if you're not doing any strength training or something, 0.8 grams per kg. It should not be more than that, actually, because protein causes kidney problems. Over protein, actually. Under protein causes all muscles problem and everything. And then the home machine, what Ajay has recommended, actually, I don't agree. They can give you relative readings, actually. They can't give you accurate reading. There are very good machines, actually, which you get in gyms, like InBody. My brother in Denver, he got his office to buy that, but that is very expensive. I used to go to Talwarkar gym, and they used to have that. And so you need a good body composition machine. Other machines, home machines, Omron machines, and other things, 2 electrodes or 4 electrodes, they give you relative readings, actually. They don't give you accurate reading, actually. You can find out what direction you are going in. And third thing is raw. Why did I get cancer? I don't know. Prostate cancer, all of a sudden. My lifestyle was very okay. I was doing gymming. Okay, I was inactive for 1 year, but that should not have caused a cancer. I suspect that raw vegetables and raw fruits, actually, in India, especially in India, I'm not talking about USA, it has a lot of chemicals and other things. And although we wash it properly, or sometimes we don't wash it and take it from the fridge and eat it. I was doing around 16 to 18 hours fasting also. Like since 2019, my total fasting 1,800 days. That is around 75% for a time, because now I can't do the fasting because I have to take the medicines. But tomorrow there is a camp, so I am again getting myself tested. Insurance doesn't pay many things in India, but in oncologist department, I see small kids, young ladies with the breast cancer, and many with the kidney problems. And
So do you
one
have,
reason is,
do you have diabetes?
no, my
No. Okay.
HbA1c is 5.1. I have a
Okay,
retina
good.
pigmentation. So I have to keep my HbA1c from 5.8 to 5.1 as low as possible, so
Yeah,
that
good.
my brightness improves. So
Yes,
I
good.
have my HbA1c. Yeah, I got my fasting last year when I was okay. I got my fasting insulation and fasting sugar also checked, and it was both were within the range, actually. And there
Very
is
good.
some formula to calculate something, insulin resistivity, but that gives something that I am partially insulin resistance, that formula.
Yeah, very good,
Yeah,
very
but
good. And
so
another thing is
Can
with
we get
kidney.
back to any questions for Ajay? Looks like Balakrishna is saying that he has reversed his diabetes a few years ago, so would like to get back to diabetes or questions for Ajay.
Yeah, so I was
yeah,
just saying that I, had success and then I slipped again. So, one has to keep one's good habits for longer.
So you want to share how did you get success and why did you go back?
So, I mean, following this group, and my wife got interested in it as well. It takes both of us to do it. So, we did have, I think it was mostly in the late COVID period. We had more time on our hands to do our daily exercise and keep our regimen strict. And once we started slipping off the strict diet regimen, I guess due to travel and due to, adjustments we had to make elsewhere, too many weddings to attend or something. Yeah. So it's
The question I have in A1C, what triggers medication? I've been hovering around 5.8. Recently, I'm at 6.1. And I told my doc, he said, you don't need medicine. So I'm not asking him for medicine, but I'm wondering what triggered medicine, what A1C triggered medicine for any of you? That's the only thing I don't have, fortunately, diabetes. I have BP and other stuff. So what should be the threshold? Because I'm pre-diabetic, but the guy says no meds required.
my experience is it's doctor dependent, depending on the current styles that exist and so on. And your doctors like some like medicines more and some don't. And so depends on where they push you. But they do tell you, like Sanjay was saying, that this is a lifestyle disease, but they don't stress it enough to make you actually stop the medication and do the lifestyle. They just say it's a lifestyle disease, but here's your pills anyway. So if you let it ride that way, it rides that way. If you insist that stay off the pills and do lifestyle changes instead, you can do that too.
Yeah, I'm happy they're not giving medicine. So, but still, I just want to make sure it doesn't.
Yeah,
I monitor every 3 months. I monitor my A1C. It hovers around that. Okay, so
Yeah, in addition to A1C, I think you should monitor your fasting insulin and fasting glucose with the fasting insulin. And there's a formula which I can share with the health group. I have already shared actually. That will tell you if you are insulin resistive or not actually. So with the A1C, you should always get once in a year fasting insulin and fasting sugar together. If so, that is important actually. If you are
Only the
insulin
question
resistant.
you should be asking is not at what point the medicine is triggered, but how can you reduce from 6.1 to 5.7?
yeah, the standard stuff they say, do
No, it's
exercise.
not a standard step. The whole talk
you
was about
do.
that.
Yeah.
The whole
Not,
talk,
it's not
is
about
about
what they
how can you
say. What
reverse
can
it.
I do, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Because
That's right.
Ajay is not a doctor. He's not talking about medicines. He's talking about
I mean,
lifestyle changes. The
Murli,
whole talk is just that.
Murli, just do small changes like, some of these people have said, like, change your diet composition, increase your exercise level a little bit, and see what that does, right? I mean,
That's what I'm doing actually. But food is something, I don't do intermittent fasting because I get hungry at work. Okay, so I don't work. I don't work from home. I work in a plant. Okay, where there's always action. So so that's the reason. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Murali, I also worked in the plant, actually power plant, 500 megawatt. And that when I joined LMK group, actually, I did not eat anything after 3 o'clock in plant. There, they used to get, it was near Varanasi in Anpara, and they used to get kachori, lot of sweets. It is famous for all these things. But I never ate anything actually after 3 o'clock. And next day morning, I used to start at 8 o'clock, breakfast at hotel. So it is possible to do in the plant also.
Thank you.
So one comment I wanted to make was about, what levels trigger medication. The absolute guidance, I would say, is change your lifestyle. But even in the US, there are multiple bodies that will have guidelines, like the American College of Physicians has a different guideline for when medication should be triggered versus the Endocrinologists Association in America, which will say, much lower levels of sugar should trigger diabetic medication. So even in the US, depending on which body's recommendations you follow, you would get different answers. But nobody would ever say not changing your lifestyle is the correct answer. Change your lifestyle and do it that way. Same things I find for blood pressure and things like that. I think I remember in the LMK course there was a J curve of all-cause mortality, and that showed, if you overly medicate yourself below, I think it was level HbA1c of 8 or even 7, something like that, then the all-cause mortality curve starts going back up at lower sugar levels because of adverse effects from medication, etc. So, it's not a clear-cut answer as to what triggers what, but everything basically says give your body a chance, change your lifestyle, and it will work. It's magic.
Yeah, I agree with that because for 1.5 years I was on the bed, and after prostate cancer 5 months I was on the bed. All of a sudden, actually, I got motivation and start walking. Earlier, I could walk only a few steps, then 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers. Now every day before breakfast, I at least complete 10,000 steps. So now I am back actually. I used to walk 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers every day. Now I am back actually. I not started a strength training. I was going to the gym actually, but my wife told me that she doesn't like the gym because weight and other things, because of sounds and other things. So we came back halfway from there. So I again wanted to join the gym. It is very near to my home, around 600, 700 meter, Talwarkar gym. But the point is that you have to get the motivation. You have to get some purpose actually in your life, and that will change you actually. So I started with few steps. I was trying with hormone therapy. Actually, it is not easy actually, because muscles, it affects muscles, it affects many other things. I'm still on hormone therapy pill. It affects your bones, but you can start. One of sudden, all of a sudden day, I started. My son shifted to Noida from Brussels because of me, and he got me radiation therapy and other things, helped me. But in Noida itself, actually, I got one day early morning, I told my wife, let's go. And we went to one Gurdwara in Chandni Chowk, Shishiganj. Everybody told me not to go there. There's very early. Then we went to second Gurdwara, that is Bangla Sahib Gurdwara. There I thought, when I can come here, why not go? And then I met Sanjay Agarwal. I met many other in 2 days. Then after coming to Mumbai back after 4.5 months, I am not stopping actually. Today I again went to my office, ex-colleague, and on Tuesday I'm going to office to get some projects. There are a lot of projects. So at 60 I was working on 500 megawatt power plant. I still want to work at 66 on some projects actually. There are old projects which very few people in world know. So I have some purpose in life. My grandson is 5.
Good for you, KN. I have to leave pretty soon, but I need to ask Ajay a question. You have changed your diet and life. You are lower weight than when I saw you in Acadia. What have you been doing, and how is it working for you? You're on mute. You're on mute.
So yeah, I've lost about 18 pounds since then. So just working on I think one thing that seems to help a lot. I mean, obviously, most people managing diet, the issue is always hunger. You feel hungry at particular moments. I think there are two things that seem to work for me. One is time restricted eating. Once you've decided that you're not going to eat after 6, what might happen is that at 7 or 7:30 or 8 you might start to feel hungry. But once you get over that, given that you've made a commitment for time restricted eating, the rest of the time it doesn't bother you till like 10 a.m. in the next morning. So time restricted eating seems to help a lot in terms of getting me to feel like I don't need to eat. That has made a big difference. The other is just more exercise, more walking, more exercise, some resistance exercise, but a lot of post meal walking. So something like 90 minutes to 2 hours of walking every day. That seems to make a difference in terms of weight loss. Now, my understanding is that a lot of people say beyond something like 45 minutes or 1 hour, it doesn't make a difference if you're walking. It's more important to do resistance training, and I've been doing some of that. But that's an area I need to work more on. I think it's important to make resistance training a key part of your regimen. But these have basically, the other thing that helps a little bit is not eating things like white rice and potatoes and things like that. Again, specifically for me, when I eat them, it seems to drive more hunger. I tend to eat a lot of them. Whereas if I eat like fibrous vegetables, other proteins, things like that, I don't feel so hungry. I feel sated much faster.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, people say, that if there's a huge spike, and that's why people believe in things like the glycemic index,
Eat
that
stuff you don't
huge
like.
spikes in the insulin when the spike ends and it comes down, you get hunger pangs.
Yep.
So I can understand that feeling. But that's awesome, man. You look a lot better. You look younger, healthier. That's nice to see.
Thanks. I need to do, there's a lot more work to be done, but I'm happy with my progress.
Yeah, and resistance training is something that I need to get into.
CGMs, I just want to make another for people who don't feel motivated enough. I want to make another call out for CGMs. Just seeing your blood sugar shoot up to levels which you would consider unhealthy is a great motivator. It makes you get up off the couch and start walking. And the fact is, as soon as you start walking, in 15 minutes, the sugar spike does come down.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much, Ajay.
Dilip, anything else?
No, any other questions? I think we kind of
Yeah.
covered.
Yeah, just 1 minute. Actually, I lost 90 kg to 68 kg in pounds. I think you can calculate in 4 years. Very healthy by TREs, healthy diet and exercise, including strength exercise. But with prostate cancer, I lost 68 to 61 kg in 1 month actually. And now I have to go back again to 675 kg and come back to 68 kg with the muscles strength training actually. So weight loss is a main thing actually, but healthy weight loss, not unhealthy like 68 to 61 in 1 month, what I went actually through because of the cancer.
All right.
Thanks
A
again,
lot, everyone,
Ajay.
for
This
Yeah,
was awesome.
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, Ajay, thank you.
great
And
discussion.
Thank you.
Pinto, I sent you a message.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Bye.
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 Bye.